got these two brands of clay. I got this Air-Dry Sculpey Clay, and then this is Premier Lightweight Stone Clay. Don't know what makes this clay different and why it's stone clay. Okay, and then I got these tiny tools. They didn't have any of the bigger ones, so I'm not gonna be able to use it on anything I make very big. And then I got this $5.99 pack of clay tools. In total, I spent $43. Oh, and I forgot, I also got tempura.
Now, I'm just gonna show you guys the tools. There's a different tool on each end of the stick. I found all of them useful, pretty much. Either between this I sculpted and something else I sculpted. The roller works, but it's not the best, to be honest, but it serves its purpose. These tools, I didn't really get that big of a chance to utilize them, but they don't feel like the best quality for the price. I would have liked them to be a bit bigger, but I'll sculpt something else smaller and we can see how it fares then.
It smells like glue. Yeah, like Elmer's glue. Why does it smell like that?
Okay. So this is what I'm making. I thought it was a perfect first thing to sculpt because it seemed pretty easy. It's big. It doesn't have tons of small detail or tons of parts to connect. And I could gift it to my best friend. So first I started off by grabbing 2 balls and rolling them into spheres for his eyeballs.
It's very stretchy too. It's like gum almost. It's very weird. I like this clay though. It's not messy like the other ones I've seen.
So then I just flatten these balls and I'm trying to make it into almost like an ashtray, just like a flat plate, but like ridges. But I don't know why I didn't do the other method where I just make like a flat circle and then it rolled out a tube and just like attached it. But I was really afraid with this clay and reattaching pieces. It didn't seem as easy to attach one clay piece to another clay piece. You definitely had to put a lot more extra work into attaching the pieces together. So you can see me using one of the tools to kind of draw out a circle, and then I kind of just like scrape out the clay and flatten it with my finger, trying to form it into a dish. It worked well enough. I don't know if the other method would have been better. I think I did it this way because I knew that I didn't want it to be super deep like an ashtray, because it's not an ashtray, it's a trinket dish. But tomato, I feel like I could have did that method and it probably would have turned out a little bit better than what I did. You can also see that I had a dish with water on the side, and I was just kind of, to be honest, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. It's just really just vibes, and I was expecting the water to like help me smooth it out. I don't think the water really helps that much. It helps a little bit, but the clay when it gets wet just gets like slimy. It doesn't really help smooth it out as much. I feel like it just makes it slimy.
We are gonna stressfully cut some of the circle off so that they can meet.
And I apologize for these like strong shadows. I have to get my lighting situation better and figure out the best way for me to film in my room, just because my room is very low light, and on top of me just filming at night.
I've connected them.
Okay, so it kind of skips forward a bit. I think my camera died or I forgot to hit record. So for this part, what I basically did, I took a tube and I flattened it and like attached it to the 2 circles on top. But there were still gaps between, because obviously I'm connecting a tubular rectangle to 2 circles, so there's gaps. So then I just took clay and filled it into the gaps, and then you can see me flipping it over to make sure that like there isn't a line of demarcation where they're connected. In the end result, there's still a line where you can see that I joined 2 pieces of clay together, but it's more on the back. And I definitely should have added more clay because it was a little like a divot, which isn't as attractive, and you'll see it when it's dried out that it's there.
I feel like because this clay dries so fast, it's hard to like get mold pieces together because it's already starting to dry a little.
Boy, did I struggle with this man's nose. I tried doing his nose 4, 5, 6 different times. I cut a lot of it out because y'all did not need to see me reform this man's nose so many times. Also, I forgot to use the tinfoil. The girl bought the tinfoil and did not use the tinfoil. The tinfoil probably would have helped a lot. 1, so you can use less clay. 2, so it dries a lot faster. And 3, so you can make the shape that you want to make with the tinfoil and just cover it with the clay. I would also recommend that. I specifically picked up porcelain clay, so that kind of dries translucent. So if you're looking for that translucent look, then I wouldn't use the tinfoil. But if you're not, yeah, use tinfoil. I don't know why I didn't, but I kind of finally got the nose and tried to make it as thin at the top so that I could smoothly blend it in to like his nose bridge. And I feel like I did a decently good job. It seems pretty attached. I also went through after and like made little tiny worms of clay to attach his nose to the rest of his face just to make sure that it wouldn't lift up. I also made sure it was wet under there, hoping that the 2 slimy clays would like attach itself. I know I've seen in TikToks that people like etch clay to attach 2 pieces together, but I didn't think to do that with this clay.
Okay, this is what it looks like right now. I just had to add some more clay there because you can tell that part was a little translucent. I want it to not break easily, so I just added some clay there. This part is hard. The back is still pretty soft, but I guess because it's not really getting air to the back. So I'm gonna flip it over, seeing as the back is pretty hard. You can see the difference here between the drier clay and the this is like wet, like out the bag wet. You can also see here, like, you really have to be careful what surface you're on. Maybe I would do this on parchment paper so you can peel it off, because it definitely got stuck to like whatever. This is the Omni Grid mat. I don't know what that means, but so I would want to be careful. I just don't want it to bend and bend, but we're just gonna leave it like this until it's like a little bit harder to touch. It'll probably take like, I don't know, 10 minutes, and I'll flip it back over.
So as I'm painting this Squidward sculpture, let's talk about this clay. Let's give you my pros and my cons. So I would say a pro is definitely that it's not messy. It's pretty soft to the touch. It's easy to mold. It's easy to use. It doesn't really get stuck to your hands if it's not too wet. And I guess another pro is that it dries kind of translucent. I didn't completely understand that when I bought it, but that's a pro depending on what you're trying to make with it. I didn't really need that translucent aspect, but it's there. Cons, the smell. The other clay I have has literally no smell. This smell is very strong. It's not like nauseating. It's not nauseating, but it's strong and it's a little bothersome. I would say it takes a long time to dry. If you're making a thicker piece, it definitely takes a long time to dry. This took like 5 days to dry fully, and I didn't even believe it was completely dry when I was painting it. I just said, fuck it, it's dry enough for me. So that's why I recommended tinfoil earlier. It would probably cut down on the drying time if you had some sort of base. Maybe this is a well-known thing when it comes to air-dry clays, but I wouldn't know this because I haven't really worked with them before. It dries really fast. which is weird. Dry fast, but it doesn't dry fast. Like it dries, like it gets this weird like outer crust thing. So like the clay itself is not dry, but it starts to like crust and it's like crystallizing almost. So it gets really hard to work with in under like 5 minutes. So you have to make sure you're putting away clay you're not immediately working with. And like you can't be working with clay for too long if you're not like putting in details. But I would say like molding it, you can't be doing that for too long because then the clay gets a really weird texture and it's really hard to work with and it's not as fun. I actually had to throw away a little bit of the clay trying to sculpt something else because it just didn't feel nice. And then I would also recommend trying to get it as smooth as possible before letting it dry. I thought that it's okay if it's a little bumpy because then I could just, you know, sandpaper it out. It is not very easy to sand, or maybe I needed a higher grit sandpaper. It was not fun to sand at all. So I would recommend also just making sure it's as smooth as possible. I wouldn't not recommend this clay, but it's a hefty price to pay for something I feel like doesn't have a decent work time, and water isn't a solution to lengthening your work time with this clay. So it's up to your discretion. I think it's a nice clay overall. It depends on what your purposes is. Like I think if you're making like jewelry or like smaller scale things, that like this clay would be more suited for that rather than stuff like what I was trying to make, like a trinket dish. Also, which if I had read the reviews before I bought that clay, I would know this. This clay shrinks as it dries. Squidward's mouth, as he was drying, I had to go back through and like re-push it in several times because it like puffed up and kind of like flattened as it was drying. So the detail of his mouth kind of completely disappeared. And I think it's the same thing that happened with the depthness of his eyes. I feel like I made them a lot deeper than they dried to be, which was very frustrating because it's like I'm making a trinket dish. Now it's kind of just like a fancy plate. And that was like particularly probably the most frustrating thing beyond it not being sandable. So yeah, this is me sealing it with Mod Podge. I have already gifted it to my best friend. She loves it. I would probably love to try to make this again, maybe with a different clay. I don't know if I'll make it with the stone clay because what I currently made with the stone clay, though I like the stone clay world better, I'm figuring out how to make it not crack. So when I figure that out, we'll come back with a sculpting video with the stone clay and we'll give it its own separate review. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this. There's a couple of other SpongeBob themed things I want to sculpt, specifically something that I seen on TikTok. But I think I'm gonna have to find a new clay to make those out of. Something better than the clay I already have, and preferably not $17 fucking dollars. But yeah, I hope you have a good day, good night, wherever you are, and I see you guys next week.